Do you want to know how to discipline your child according to the Bible? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and education, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about disciplining your child according to the Bible. In this video, we're going to be talking about what the Bible says about raising your child, what we can learn from that, and how to be a good shepherd for your child. I have to say right at the very beginning that there are going to be some people who are going to be surprised about this video. I think that as soon as somebody says, what does the Bible say about raising your child or about parenting, I think that people immediately think of heavy-handed parenting. So I just have to dispel myths. Just because Jesus cleansed the temple and it says that he had a whip and he turned over a table does not mean he was angry, does not mean that he was out of control. You have to remember he sat down and he braided the whip first. And we don't know if he whipped a person. He probably just cracked it to make a noise. He needed a noisemaker. We don't know if he turned over the table in absolute rage or if he just turned over the table. Everyone takes stories that they read, especially stories in the Bible, these ancient stories, and they plug in what they might be feeling at that time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is what the Son of God felt at that time. We have to remember we have a very highly principled person who understands all truth, who is the most perfect person that there was. Did he unleash on someone in a way that would be emotionally manipulative? I have my doubts. Do I think he turned over the table? Yes. Cracked a whip? Yes. Braided a whip? Yes. But nobody said he did any of it in anger. So there you go. So this video is about what the Bible says, and it does not involve getting angry at the children. So there are multiple parents in the Bible. Some of them do a good job. Some of them don't do a good job. Some of them have successful children who learn to love God and love their parents and serve the people around them. And others are selfish and they just serve themselves and their own flesh, and they suffer the consequences. We see stories like Abraham and Isaac of a father and a mother that pray for their children so that they could have a child, and then they have one. And the love for this child is so great, so difficult, so heavy that they're asked to do something that might be life-threatening, obviously, for this child. And we see their hearts grieving, and we see the child loving and being obedient. We see that the child would never have trusted a parent to do the things that Abraham was doing if that parent had been aggressive or bullyish or intimidating to the child at all. That parent must have been loving. We see that Adam and Eve, probably parenting all their children the same, turned out different types of children. One that would even kill another child. So sometimes even the best of parenting doesn't have the outcomes that you hope for. And that's because people have choice. We see Noah, who loves his children and teaches his children. We see Jacob, who becomes Israel, and how much he loves his children, how he loves his sons. He gives them gifts. He cries over them. He teaches them and trains them to be strong and hardworking. And above all, we see the examples of Mary, the mother of Christ, and Joseph, who teaches Jesus to work, to become a carpenter probably. We see how they honor the will of God, how they do whatever is required, even if it means not even knowing why they left in the middle of the night. We see them follow what God tells them to do. They follow inspiration and personal revelation as they train up the Son of God. What amazing parents they must have been. What can we learn from them? Those stories probably teach more about parenting than anything. There is a story of a woman that is taken in adultery to Jesus Christ. I love this because this is a beautiful moment where he nurtures her. She's thrown at him. They say, she was taken in the very act of adultery. What will you do? Because of course the law is to stone her. He gets down on her level. He thinks, he understands, he loves her. And he says, whoever's around here who has never done anything wrong, you cast the first stone. He who is without sin, cast the first stone. He calls them on their judgment. He says, shouldn't we be loving and understanding and teaching here instead of killing someone for their sin? Wow. And they walk away. And he says, where are your accusers? And then he says, now go, but sin no more. He declares that it's a sin. She goes away likely rejoicing to everyone that she was forgiven by the Son of God and that she knows that he was the Messiah. What a beautiful thing. What a wonderful lesson. He loved those that couldn't be touched or wouldn't be touched by other people. He loved everyone. That example in story after story after story, and how he wore his life out teaching the people is much more important for me than one moment where maybe he got emotional and turned tables over in the temple. Maybe. But nobody really knows. What we do see is that when he's dying on the cross, he gives Peter charge to take care of his mother. And he asks God the Father to forgive the people who are killing him. That's some pretty great parenting, isn't it? Do you think that we could use those same principles that Jesus Christ used and that the holy prophets use in the Bible in our parenting? Yes, we can, because they're principles. If you've subscribed to this channel already, you know that it is all about the principle of self-government and about skills that you can use to have more self-government yourself in your relationships and in your parenting, but also to help your children learn self-government and have self-government in their relationships and in their parenting. Self-government is a principle, and a principle is timeless. A principle is eternal. So if one human ever can use a principle, find it and use it, then anyone can and should use that principle of self-government. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That means that the parent is charged with the training. The parent is responsible for doing the training for the child. The parent must train the child. Now, what does train mean? I actually have an entire training about what it means to train the heart of a child. So to train in the Greek lexicon means to strangle and inaugurate. So that's two principles. Strangle not meaning to strangle somebody, but to give somebody boundaries, parameters, to say that's a no and this is what you need to do. So there's direction that happens there. And then inauguration means that you see where they're headed in the future and you prepare them for that person that they're supposed to become years from now, down the road, a certain type of an adult that they are supposed to become. That is inauguration. So when you train the heart of a person, you're training their heart by teaching them what's right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. You're giving them the skills that they need so that they can become that successful adult years later in their future down the road. That is what it means to train a person. Now, just because you do the training doesn't mean they don't have a choice, because every person does have a choice. In fact, the whole idea that a person can self-govern hinges on the idea that they can choose. Every single one of us can choose the thoughts in our head. We can choose the actions that we make. We can choose the people that we want to love. We get to choose. So that means that we have to honor the choice of our children. We can teach them, we can train them. We can train them on all of the gospel principles and all of the other principles that they see all around them. But ultimately, if they choose not to follow those principles for a time, that's their choice. So what do? We hold on to principle. We keep loving them, nurturing them, caring about them, even if they don't follow the principles of the gospel that we wish that they would. Even if they go to prison and do horrible things to other people, we still hold that love, that flame. We still pray for them and care for them. We don't dismiss them as not pleasing to us. We still love them. And then, in time, if we stay constant with the things that we taught them, which means we can't bend their direction, we stay constant, but we still reach out with love again and again to them and keep praying, then guess what happens? Over time, whether it's while they're still alive or maybe later in heaven on the other side, they come back to what's true. They recognize it was true. So don't just manipulate the children and teach them what you hope they will do to make your life convenient. Teach them truth. And then when you train them up in the way they should go, which is truth, ultimately, in the end, they'll come back to it. Psalm 127 says, children are a gift and a blessing from God. That means that we need to value them as a gift. We need to think of them as children of God. When I was young, my parents taught me a song, I am a child of God, and He has sent me here, has given me an earthly home, with parents kind and dear. Lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. Teach me all that I must do to live with Him someday. It's a plead to the parents. My parents taught me a song that told me that I was a gift and blessing from God, and would actually train me not only to look to them, but to plead with them, to please teach me, guide me, don't let me go astray. I'm counting on you, Mom and Dad, for that. It would hold them accountable and me accountable at the same time for what happened in that teaching and training relationship. Ephesians 6:4 says, fathers, do not exasperate your children, but to bring your children up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. So this means that we need to teach our children, instruct them about what God would have them do, but also we need to train them in it, which means that we have to live it too. We have to live all of those principles, constantly be trying to refine ourselves again and again. We need to be self-governing. That will lead them to do the same. Matthew 18:10 says, see that you do not despise these little ones. Then it goes on to talk about how they're angels from God. Our children are supposed to be seen as angels from God. We all are from God. And we're supposed to value every person around us with that potential and that origin. Just like my parents taught me. I am a child of God. We all are. So what can you do to teach your children the way the Bible teaches you to teach them? Focus on self-government. Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors and your own condition of heart so that you can control them. Teach your children about calmness. Teach them how to communicate and solve their problems in a way where they can keep the Spirit of the Lord. Teach them discernment. Teach them to love their family and to love goodness and to love God. And then you will be training them up in the way that they should go. There are more things that I can teach you about self-government. We've just started here, but there is a video, it's a full-length class on this channel that teaches children how to follow instructions, accept no answers and criticism, accept consequences, and how to disagree appropriately. It teaches you how to parent and correct your children with calmness and patience and love, but also how to hold them accountable and be firm. The name of that video is The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. It's not necessary to spank or hit children. It's just not. For years, I did therapeutic treatment care for troubled teens. And during that time, I could not touch them. They weren't mine. I would have to go to court if I didn't. And I wondered, what about that Bible verse that says, spare the rod, and then you spoil the child? But then a few years later, my heart was set at peace because I studied and found out that shepherds had a staff and a rod. And the Bible also says to raise your child by rod and staff. The staff was to guide the sheep, never to hit the sheep. The rod, which was thick and mean, was meant to beat the wolves away. So if we're going to spare the rod, that means if we don't beat those wolves away, then we will spoil our child. How do we keep them safe? By beating the wolves away. Those videos, those bad ideas, those things they should not be looking at all of the time. Beat them away, and then guide your child toward truth and toward God who loves them. So click on the link to the video, The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success now. I'll see you there.